In Udenta Kingdom, where the morning sun always rose in a soft gold hue and the air smelled of early dew, the people loved their royal family almost as deeply as they loved their harvest. And among the royal household, none were more cherished than the king's two daughters, the radiant Princess Ego and her lively younger sister, Princess Udo. They were inseparable, two flames from the same fire, two melodies in the same song. Whenever Ego walked through the marketplace with her calm smile, Udo was always beside her, laughing, teasing, spinning around like a whirlwind of joy. They shared food, clothes, secrets, dreams, everything. People often said the princesses were one heart living in two bodies. But time has a strange way of testing even the deepest bonds. One warm afternoon, a palace messenger arrived, panting as though he had run from one kingdom to another without stopping. He fell to his knees before the king and queen and announced that the King of Oboli, Udenta's powerful neighbor, desired a marriage alliance. He wished for one of Udenta's princesses to marry his only son, Prince Kolu, and be made future Queen of Oboli. The king listened with brightened eyes. A royal alliance meant protection, shared prosperity, and strengthened bloodlines. The queen smiled as well, though gently. She knew one daughter's fate was about to be sealed. What the king didn't know was that Udo, curious, energetic, always wondering, had been standing behind the carved palace pillars when the messenger spoke. She heard every word. Her heart leapt with hope. A royal marriage. A grand coronation. A future where she, Princess Udo, would be Queen of Oboli. She imagined the beautiful palace, the jewels, the respect, the power. She imagined Prince Kolu bowing before her. She imagined her sister smiling at her proudly. But imagination is a dangerous thing. It makes disappointment sharper when reality enters, uninvited. The king summoned his chiefs that evening to deliberate. Tradition demanded that the first daughter marry before the second. No matter how modern times became, Udenta held firmly to that ancient rule. Princess Ego was older by 2 years, so when the council gathered, the decision took only minutes. The first daughter shall go, an elder declared. It is the way of our people, another chief added. It brings honor to Udenta, the king concluded. Udo heard it all from the corridor where she had hidden again. Her heart sank. Her fingers trembled. A sour taste filled her mouth, something between anger and disappointment. Why Ego? Why always Ego? Why must the world bend toward her sister? Why must she, Udo, always wait? Ego found her hours later, sitting alone under the Udala tree. Sister, are you all right? Ego asked gently. Udo forced a smile. I am fine. But she was not fine. Pain had planted itself deep inside her, taking root, growing quietly. As preparations for the royal wedding began, colorful fabrics arriving from neighboring towns, musicians rehearsing, the palace buzzing, Udo changed. She avoided Ego, snapped at servants, isolated herself. And whenever she saw her sister fitting wedding outfits or receiving gifts from Oboli, her heart twisted tighter. Why does she have to come first in everything? Udo whispered into the darkness of her room. Did I ask to be the last born? A week to the wedding, Udo began to devise a plan. A terrible plan. One she told herself she would never use, but kept returning to anyway. She battled between guilt and desire, but the desire was stronger. It whispered that the future she wanted would slip away forever unless she acted. The night before the wedding day arrived, quiet, cool, almost too peaceful. Princess Ego sat in her room admiring her wedding attire, a mixture of cream and gold that made her glow like a morning sun. She hummed happily, unaware of the storm drifting toward her. Udo knocked softly. Sister, may I come in? Ego's face brightened. Udo. I'm so happy. Come, let us talk. Udo stepped in wearing the sweetest smile she had worn in months. I wanted to make peace, she began. I want us to share one last sister moment before you get married. Ego, touched, hugged her warmly. And for a moment, Udo's heart shook with guilt. But the plan was already alive. Walk with me to the backyard, Udo suggested. Let's use the back staircase so no one sees us and disturbs us. Ego agreed gladly. They descended the narrow wooden staircase that led to the quiet back garden. Udo walked behind her sister, her breath shaky, her fingers trembling. Her heart pounded loudly, too loudly. She felt tears pricking her eyes. But envy is a cold beast. Once unleashed, it devours hesitation. As ego reached the last few steps, Udo placed her hands on her sister's back. "Forgive me," she whispered. Then she pushed. The wooden stairs creaked sharply as Ego's body tumbled down them. She hit the ground with a heavy thud. Her head struck a stone. And then, stillness. Silence swallowed the backyard. Udo stood frozen. For a moment she thought Ego had died. She rushed down, trembling violently. Ego was unconscious, but breathing. Relief washed over her like cold water. Yet Udo did not call for help immediately. She waited. She sat there shaking, her mind spinning. After a full hour, she tore her gown, smeared dirt on her face, and ran screaming into the palace. "Help! Help! My sister!" Servants rushed, elders followed, the king and queen stumbled out in panic. Ego was carried to her room, unconscious but alive. The royal physicians worked tirelessly until dawn, assuring the king she would recover with time. But by then, the wedding day had already begun. When the in-laws from Oboli arrived and learned the bride was unconscious, fear spread among them. "This is a bad omen," the Oboli chief priest said. "A wedding cannot proceed this way." "But there is a solution." "What is it?" the king asked desperately. "The second daughter must marry the prince in her sister's place. If not, we will seek alliance with another kingdom." Udo stood behind the people, pretending shock. But inside, fireworks exploded. Her chest fluttered. Her future was finally falling into her hands. Hours later, Udo became Prince Kolu's bride. And Princess Ego, still unconscious, lay quietly in her chamber, unaware that her entire destiny had been stolen. When Ego awoke the next day and learned everything, she wept until her voice cracked. She locked her door and cried for days, heartbroken not just by her fate, but by her sister's betrayal. But fate was not done with Udenta. Another kingdom had its own secrets brewing, and Ego's story was far from over. For while Ego mourned, an ancient truth in Oboli was about to rise, one that would shake every throne. The day of Prince Kolu's coronation in Oboli arrived with drums, chants, and a palace buzzing with anticipation. Udo stood proudly beside her husband, adorned in the grand attire of a princess of Oboli. At last, she felt life had favored her. A few whispers from the people, a few stares from the elders, but she ignored them. She was a queen. That was all that mattered. The chief priest approached with the sacred ovar, the staff of authority only the true son of the king could hold. It was a centuries-old tradition. The crowd held their breath. Udo squeezed Kolu's hand. The king smiled. Even the birds seemed to pause. "Prince Kolu," the priest proclaimed, "receive the ovar of your forefathers." But the moment Kolu stretched forth his hand, the impossible happened. The ovar fell. It slipped straight out of the priest's hands and crashed loudly onto the stone floor. Gasps filled the great hall. The drummer stopped mid-beat. "This is impossible," the priest cried. "The ovar never rejects the rightful heir." Kolu tried to laugh nervously. "It slipped. That is all." "No," the chief priest raised trembling fingers. "It did not slip. It refused you." Murmurs spread like wildfire. The queen mother stepped forward, shaking. She pressed her palms together, then suddenly dropped to her knees. "Forgive me," she screamed. "Forgive me, my king. Forgive me, my ancestors." Everyone froze. "I lied," she wailed. "Kolu is not your son. I brought a bastard into the palace. He is not the prince of Oboli." A loud gasp rippled through the room. The king staggered. Udo felt her legs weakening. Kolu shook his head violently. "Mother, stop this madness." But she continued. "I was barren. I was desperate. I stole a newborn child from a distant village and brought him home, claiming he was ours. I begged the gods for mercy, but the gods do not forget. The other has spoken truth today. Chaos erupted. Some cried. Some shouted. The king collapsed onto his throne. Guards seized Kolu immediately. Then who is the true heir? Someone yelled. The chief priest closed his eyes. The king's second son, Prince Emeka. He is the rightful heir. Emeka, quiet, humble, kind-hearted, stepped forward in shock. He had never desired the throne. He had only come to witness his brother's coronation. But fate had thrust greatness upon him. The priest lifted the other again. Prince Emeka, he called. Emeka hesitated, then extended his hand. The other glowed. A soft, warm light spread across the hall. The people fell to their knees. The gods had spoken. The true King of Oboli, the priest announced, is Emeka. Drums began again, slowly, then stronger, celebrating the rise of the rightful heir. But in the midst of the joy, Udo and Kolu stood trembling. Within hours Kolu was stripped of his title, dragged out of the palace, and banished. Udo, who had married into royalty, now found herself married to no one of significance. The people whispered as she passed. Some mocked. Some pitied. None respected her. Meanwhile, Emeka withdrew quietly to his chambers, overwhelmed by the sudden change. But a thought tugged at him persistently, the image of Princess Ego. Her calm voice. Her soft smile. The quiet strength in her eyes. He remembered visiting Udenta with Kolu before the wedding and meeting the elder princess by chance. She had offered him water. They had spoken briefly. But something about her had stayed with him. And when he learned that she had been injured the night before her wedding, something inside him refused to rest. He began secretly sending palace guards to Udenta to inquire about her health. When he learned she had woken up, but was silent and heartbroken, he knew what he had to do. Weeks after becoming king, Emeka traveled to Udenta with gifts, diplomats, and a humble heart. Princess Ego was seated by the palace pond, her eyes heavy from days of tears, when she heard someone approach. She turned, and froze. The new King of Oboli stood before her. "Your Majesty," she gasped, rising to her feet. "Princess Ego," he said gently. "Forgive the intrusion, but I needed to see you. I needed to know if you were well." Her eyes softened. No one had asked her that in weeks. Everyone tiptoed around her sorrow, but no one truly saw her. "I am managing," she whispered. "You were wronged," Emeka said quietly. "Greatly wronged. And I hate that your pain was caused in the name of my kingdom." Tears welled in Ego's eyes. She tried to hide them, but Emeka stepped closer. "You may cry," he said softly. "Crying does not make you weak." And she did cry. 4 minutes. For everything she had lost. Emeka visited again. And again. Weeks turned into months. Each time he came, Ego's heart stitched itself a little more. Emeka listened to her. Respected her. Treated her as though she mattered, not because she was a princess, but because she was herself. And slowly, love grew. Months later, during a sunset visit, Emeka knelt before her. "Princess Ego," he said with trembling sincerity, "you deserve joy, not stolen, not forced, but freely given. I ask for the privilege to give you that joy. Will you be my queen?" Her breath caught. After all the pain, all the betrayal, all the heartbreak, the gods had written a new destiny for her. "Yes," she whispered. "I will marry you." Their wedding was a festival of nations. 2 kingdoms danced together. Udenta rejoiced. Oboli celebrated. The drums shook the ground for days. Princess Ego became Queen Ego, beloved, honored, cherished. And far away, Kolu and Udo lived a different life entirely. But justice was not finished. For the truth has a way of finding every hidden heart. Kolu had been thrown out of the palace with only the clothes on his back. The people had mocked him as a fraud, a stranger who lived years in a borrowed identity. Udo followed him, torn between shame and fear. She had married into royalty only to find herself married to a man with nothing. They returned to the village of his mother, the woman who had stolen him as a baby. The people there stared at Udo with suspicion. Some remembered her as the princess who married a prince. Now she was the former princess of nothing. Days turned to weeks. Kolu grew bitter, restless, angry. Udo tried to help, but she was drowning in her own guilt. Nights were worst. She would wake sweating, hearing eagles scream in her nightmares. The scene played over and over, the staircase, the push, the fall. One evening, while the village women sat around the fire roasting plantain, Udo walked into the circle and confessed everything. "I pushed my sister," she said bluntly. "I pushed her because I wanted what was hers." Gasps rose. Some women stood. Others backed away. "You pushed the princess. You harmed your own blood. You betrayed Udenta." Shame coated her like thick mud. She could no longer hide. She no longer wanted to. From that day on, Udo became an outcast even in the small village. She fetched her own water, cooked her own meals, survived on small labor she could offer. Kolu, angry at his fall from grace, blamed her for everything. They argued often. He drank. He shouted. Their marriage rotted like a fruit left too long in the sun. Meanwhile, Ego flourished in Oboli as queen. The people adored her gentle nature. Emeka adored her even more. Their love grew like a well-watered garden. Ego forgave life. She forgave fate. And slowly, she forgave Udo as well, not forgetting the pain, but choosing to release its hold. One afternoon, during a festival honoring the ancestors, Ego approached Emeka. "There is something I must do," she said. "Something my heart will not rest until it is done." Emeka cupped her hand. "Then let us do it." The next morning, the king and queen of Oboli traveled quietly to the small village where Udo now lived. No fanfare. No guards marching loudly. Just a simple visit. Udo was bending over a stream washing clothes when she heard her name whispered urgently. "Princess, princess, look." She turned and dropped the cloth in her hands. Queen Ego stood before her, radiant as ever, yet calm and gentle. Udo's knees buckled. "Sister," she whispered. I don't deserve to face you." "You are still my sister," Ego said softly. "Nothing can change that." Tears burst from Udo's eyes. She fell to the ground. "Forgive me. I was blinded by envy. I let darkness use my heart. I stole your future. I betrayed your love. Forgive me." Ego knelt beside her. "I forgave you long ago." Udo sobbed harder. "I am not worthy." "You are human," Ego whispered. "And humans fall. But humans also rise." Emeka stepped forward. "Princess Udo, you will return to Udenta. Your parents miss you. Your kingdom awaits your healing." Udo shook her head violently. "No. I cannot go back there. They will reject me. They will spit on me." Ego lifted her chin. "They will see you through my eyes." And so she returned. Back in Udenta, the people murmured when Udo arrived. The king wept openly at the sight of his long-lost daughter. The queen hugged her tightly, sobbing into her hair. In the days that followed, Ego visited her often. They talked about old memories, lost time, broken trust, and renewed sisterhood. Healing was slow but steady. And in Oboli, Emeka's reign blossomed. Peace spread. Trade flourished. Two kingdoms became one harmonious force. Kolu, meanwhile, continued to wander, bitter at the world. But his story became nothing more than a whispered warning: a borrowed crown cannot fit forever.